week, we got a big Xbox leak, a new Sidekick style handheld, a big Microsoft Activision update, and more. So let's just go ahead, together, as a people, and check it out! And welcome to another sensational Sunday. I'm Mike, and I'm back to kick it with you and talk about the gaming news. And you know what else I kicked it with back in the day? The T-Mobile Sidekick. So if you're not familiar with that phone, the Sidekick was a popular phone back in the day before the rise of smartphones that had a keyboard hidden under the screen that either slid up or flipped out. So I had the Sidekick 3 back in the day, and that had a flip out screen, but of course there were other models that had like a slide up screen. Now of course today's phones are a lot more capable and have a lot more features, but man, they were some cool phones back in the day. The good news is though that the company Ayaneo seems to have been inspired by the Sidekick and the new handheld they announced called the Ayaneo Slide. So Ayaneo was one of the earlier players in the handheld PC gaming space, basically prior to the Steam Deck invasion. But they have officially announced their newest handheld. Now it has a slide up screen that can be adjusted to different angles, and the design does remind me a lot of the Sidekick with the overall shape and the rounded edges. They also play up the classic look in their marketing material, but from a more modern standpoint, it's a lot closer to like a GPD Win 3 or 4. But GPD's design, especially with the 4, was more inspired by the PSP or the PlayStation Vita. And aside from the design, it's going to have a 6-inch 1080p screen. It's using the AMD 7840U for its processor, and it's going to feature Hall effect thumbsticks, which are a lot less likely to experience things like stick drift. Now, there's no pricing or release date available yet, but traditionally their handhelds have been around the $1,000 price range. Now, of course, there'll probably be handhelds that are better values, like the Steam Deck or Lenovo's upcoming handheld, but I really like this design. It's one of the things that I loved about the GPD Win 3 when I first got that. Either way, if you're looking for a 2005 throwback, Ayaneo got you. But you know who almost got? Unity. So this started well over a week ago. I didn't cover it last week, but if you're not familiar with Unity, it's a game engine that a developer would use to basically build their games. Well, they recently made a controversial decision to start charging developers each time a game created on their engine was installed. So the initial announcement was supposed to start on January 1st of next year, and it would have had developers pay based on which plan they were on. So people that were on Unity Personal and Plus would have had to pay 20 cents per install after their game reached $200,000 in revenue within a 12-month period. Unity Pro members, the cap was 1 million and it would have been 15 cents per install, while Unity Enterprise members would have also had to reach 1 million and it would have been 0.125 cents per install. Also, this whole thing was going to apply to everyone, even people on existing plans, and this would have been for every install. So for example, I sometimes install a game 3 or 4 times because I have multiple computers and consoles. So the developers would have had to pay each time that I install this game on one of my various PCs. So of course, developers are not happy. While it doesn't seem like a large fee, it really adds up, especially with like any developers. That per install fee could have a huge effect on their budgets, especially for developers that had games in development prior to them making this announcement that didn't account for these fees. So of course, as what usually happens when a company makes stupid decisions, they backtracked on their initial plan and apologized. So under their new updated plan, Unity Personal users are not subject to the fee. Now people on the Pro or Enterprise plan will have to pay a cut of 2.5% of their revenue, or a calculated amount based on each user engaging with the game, and this will be per month. This will also no longer affect anyone using the current version of the engine, but anyone who uses the version of the engine that's shipping in 2024 or after. So this overall sounds a little bit more reasonable, but I just think that initial announcement breaks the trust of developers that are developing games using that engine. So it's good that they backtracked, and at least anyone that's mid-development on a game and are using the current version of the engine won't be subject to the fees. And now devs can decide, if they want to use this new version of Unity and be subject to the fees after next year. But yeah, I think that by doing this, and even someone dialing it back, that they've done major damage to their reputation. As the Engadget article points out, when this happened, there were several developers that started looking into other open source options when the announcement was first made. So only time will tell if Unity still loses business after this, even after them somewhat backtracking, but still keeping the fees in place. And who else probably wishes they could backtrack a bit? Microsoft. There was a leak of emails and slides that were accidentally shared online from Microsoft's trial with the FTC over the Activision purchase. Now, I'm not covering all the leaks in this video, but Kotaku did a roundup of a lot of the information from the leaks, so let's talk about a few of the more interesting ones. So there was a leaked email from Phil Spencer discussing potentially purchasing Nintendo. The quote shared from the email stated, "Getting Nintendo would be a career moment. It's just taken a long time for Nintendo to realize that their future exists off of their own hardware. A long time, ... Smiley face." The email also talks about purchasing Valve and Warner Brother games. Now this is interesting because Microsoft and Nintendo have had kind of a friendly relationship in more recent history, but given how hard it's been for them to purchase Activision, I'll have more on that later, I'm not even sure that this would have got past regulators anyway, even if Nintendo said yes to being bought out. I'll admit though, it would be interesting to play Nintendo games developed for current gen hardware. Now another big leak that came from this was Bethesda's roadmap, and upon that map were some sequels to games like Ghostwire Tokyo and Dishonored, but more interesting were the remasters for Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion and Fallout 3. Now if this does end up being true, this does kind of suck for Bethesda because I'm sure they didn't want the news to get out that way, but I would be super excited for an Oblivion remaster. It was definitely one of the first great Xbox 360 games I remember playing back in the day. Now there are two more things I want to talk about from the leak that's related to hardware. One thing that I was always curious about was how well was the Series S doing in comparison to the Series X? Well, one of the things the leaks revealed was back in April of last year, 74.8% of new Xboxes sold were Series S's. Now according to the Kotaku article, now it's most likely closer to 50-50, but it's interesting to see how popular the Series S is, which makes sense considering that it's been on sale a lot for $200 and sometimes comes with games included. But the Series S may not be the only all-digital system that Microsoft releases for this generation. So another part of this leak showed a slide with an updated Series X that's supposed to come out next year that's all digital with a new cylinder-like design. Now if the information is true from this leaked slide, it will be $500 but have a 2TB storage option with better power efficiency. According to the leak, it's codenamed Brooklyn, and like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be all digital. Now personally, as someone who doesn't really buy physical games at all, I would have taken the option with the 2 TB of storage if that was available at launch, if it was the same price as the disc-based one. But there is actually value to having a disc drive on the Series X, considering that you can play 360 games on it. So hopefully if they do this option, they still keep the disc option around for people that want that. Now there were a lot of other details that came out from these leaks, but these were the ones that I thought were the most interesting. The full article is linked in the description from Kotaku under the references section, so if you want to go check out the rest of the leaks, you can find it down there. But even with the leaks, it wasn't all bad news for Microsoft this week, as we got another update on the Microsoft Activision buyout. And that's what we're talking about today in our final story. The last time we checked in on this ongoing saga, Microsoft and Activision extended their deadline to October 18th to try to get approval from the UK's regulatory body, the CMA, after they previously blocked the deal due to their cloud gaming concerns. Microsoft appealed with an offer to license their cloud streaming rights to Ubisoft. So basically, Ubisoft will decide who gets to license these cloud-based games for any streaming services that wants them. So that brings us to today. And the CMA has made the decision on the appeal, and they've officially given their approval. So their official response was, the CMA's position has been consistent throughout. This merger could only go ahead if competition, innovation, and choice of cloud gaming was preserved. In response to our original probation, Microsoft has now substantially restructured the deal, taking the necessary steps to address our original concern. So yeah, it looks like since the CMA was the last major hurdle for Microsoft and Activision, this deal is likely to close by the 18th of next month. But of course, the CMA had to throw some additional shade about the situation by saying, it would have been far better though if Microsoft had put forward this restructure during our original investigation. This case illustrates the cost, uncertainty, and delay that parties can incur if a credible and effective remedy exists but is not put on the table at the right time. At that point, I was like, all right, y'all need to calm down. You already made your point. In the defense of Microsoft, every other regulatory body, except for them, approved the deal with its original terms. It's like if the teacher gives you a second chance on a project because you didn't do well, and then you get an A the second time, and they're like, well, if you did the project right the first place, then you wouldn't have had to redo it. All right, we get it. Shut up. But anyway, I guess we're finally approaching the end of this whole thing. And it looks like Activision Blizzard will officially become part of Microsoft. Of course, the next update I'm expecting to give is when this deal is officially closed, sometime in the next few weeks. So we'll see what happens by October 18th. But I know by the 18th that this video will be over, and that's because I'm bringing it to a conclusion right now. But let me know what you think down in the comments about Activision Blizzard being under Microsoft. Let me know down below, and if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell notification to be notified when I drop a video or a live stream. And always do at least 2 things at the same time. Peace.